What makes March Madness special? For me, it's always the upsets. It's always the unlikely heroes, the crazy shots, and the unexpected victories for mid major teams. And today I want to talk about upsets to keep on your radar and upsets to just avoid altogether. I put in some statistical information, made a couple of comparative charts and models here on Excel as well that we're going to walk through for some of the seeds, just comparing their strengths and such. But generally, here, you want to be careful of your upsets. If you're just picking any upset without data, it's kind of hard to hit on them and to be consistent. You might get one or two, but oftentimes when you mess up, it breaks your bracket. So first, before we get into that, I want to talk about picking your Final Four real quick. If you guys want to pick a good Final Four, you want to run with the statistics this year. So since 1998, 10 teams have finished the season with a net rating of 30 or greater, meaning on average between offense and defense, they're 30 points better than the opposition. 3 teams this year, 3 of the 1 seeds, Duke, Arizona, and Michigan, not Florida, but Duke, Arizona, and Michigan are above that 30-point mark. And there's not been a team since we started tracking advanced data that has not made the Final Four with that rating. So, not that those teams are going to win necessarily. One of those 3 probably will win, but those 3 likely, or at least 2 of them will be in the Final Four. And so those are teams that I'm going to pick for my Final Four. But let's look here at the bracket and some of the upsets that you should pick. So first, we think about upsets in a few ways. The first is your mid-majors. We got to start with the mid-majors. So who are the best mid-majors? So I made a quick Excel sheet here on the mid-majors comparing their KenPom ratings. I looked at quad 1 wins, quad 2 wins, overall power ratings, all the above. And generally what this says, I built here some pivot tables, but summarize the data here. Generally, what the advanced statistics say is any team at 60 or below in KenPom has a chance to make a run. That is kind of your Cinderella, quote unquote. That's kind of your mark for Cinderella. So given this data, when I look at this and I take a deeper dive, this is just your mid-major, so we're not double-digit seeds. We excluded the Mountain West here because they're not really a mid-major. But if we're just talking mid-majors from different conferences here, the best ones in terms of KenPom, in terms of quad wins, it's really these 3 that stand out to me: St. Louis, VCU, and USF. And these teams are unique in a few ways. First of all, St. Louis had a crazy run. They were 25-1 at some point in the season. I think they ended with 3 or 4 losses. They lost early in the tournament to Dayton, but they've got some guys, March Madness star written all over Robbie Avila, and they're a 9 seed. I think they're in the bottom side of the bracket here. Here we go, St. Louis. So they're an 8-9 matchup. St. Louis is the highest rated mid-major technically. And a lot of people are picking them to win this game outright. The problem for them is Georgia's a very high-powered offense. And they can score, but the nice thing is Georgia's defense is not great. So if they can play solid defense and they can score enough points, they're going to win this game. And Robbie Avila, of course, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he's got March Madness star written all over him. This is an upset that plenty of people are picking. 47% ESPN advanced odds. You know, their defense is better. Georgia's defense is porous, and I don't know what to think about a lot of this late SEC stuff. So there's a few things I'm looking at here is what's your matchup, what are you good at, and what are some of the advanced statistics. So the advanced statistics say that St. Louis is capable of winning a game or 2 in March Madness. The next would be VCU. They're the next highest mid-major. So let's look into see who they're playing real quick. VCU. All right, we've got VCU North Carolina. So here's the thing with North Carolina. Caleb Wilson, the best player for North Carolina this whole season, he scored 26 points against Duke. He broke his thumb. He's out. And you look here at VCU, they've got good experienced guard play. Terrence Hill, Lazar Djokovic, those guys can play, and they can really run the offense well. With VCU as well, 27-7, they play extremely fast-paced. You look here down to some of their offensive metrics, 82 points a game. The defense is a little shaky at times, so is Carolina's. But also what this team has with VCU is they've got 2 quad 1 wins. I think one of them is Dayton, and they might have beat St. Louis as well. St. Louis had 2 quad 1 wins, as we saw, but we need to see something. We need to see a quad win or 2. VCU is ranked 46th in KenPom. We're inside that 60 range. That's a team that could get the wins. They also, of course, have 5 quad 2 wins. And yeah, I think just with the matchup, especially going against a weaker North Carolina team, a team that's hot, that won their conference tournament. I think they've won 15 of their last 16 games, if I'm not mistaken. They're on fire. It is Greenville, South Carolina, which is closer to North Carolina. We know they travel well, but this is one of the lowest lines as well. So the odds makers are telling you something maybe. A lot of people are picking it, but the 11-6 is a common one where we're going to see some of these better mid-major teams. All right, so that is one that I want to look at. And the next we had up on the chart there was South Florida, USF. We'll see if I... Oh, South Florida. Here we go. So South Florida playing another weaker ACC team. So we find South Florida in here. USF, they're 49th. Now, I actually would say that I like South Florida better than I like VCU. And I think the reason is Wes Enos is a player. This guy can create. They've got 2 really good scorers, so can kind of balance each other out. They've got solid size, and this team is extremely fast-paced. I think they have the 3rd fastest offensive pace in the whole tournament, behind Illinois and Alabama, I believe. They run the floor. This team is efficient. They score a lot of points. And going up against Louisville, who just had their point guard, Michael Williams, out, or Michael Brown, I think is his name. He just got ruled out for the whole tournament. He broke a bone, or I think sprang something in the ACC tournament, so he's not going to be playing. And that without him, Louisville's offense has just not been able to be as efficient. Now, their defense is still good. The ACC defenses are strong. But when you look at a mid-major team, you want somebody that can go on runs. You need somebody that's going to be able to score with the opposition. And when they have an off shooting night, there's guys that can pick up the pace, pick up the slack a little bit. South Florida as well, in a better conference. It's not the A-10 as well. We saw the A-10 was VCU, St. Louis. It's a better mid-major conference as well. South Florida, I think they're in the American here. It's a pretty solid conference as well. We've seen other big-time teams, Wichita State, among others, make big runs out of this conference. And, yeah, Michael Brown, of course, is out. Louisville went 7-5 with him this season. And they take a lot of threes. It's going to be iffy, but this is the matchup that I actually like the most. So if I was going to pick one, I would pick this South Florida team to win in an upset. So those are the 3 upsets I probably feel the best about. But of course, we got to look at some of these 12 and 13 seeds as well. So the 12 seeds: Akron, McNeese, UNI, and High Point. Those are our 12 seeds here. Everyone loves this High Point, the opportunity for High Point here. And I think it's going up against a Wisconsin team. Oh, let's get back here. I think there we go, High Point. And it's not liking me here. But there we go, High Point and Wisconsin. So we got High Point pulled up. They won 30 games. They made the tournament last year. This team lost to Purdue because they don't have size. And that is the biggest concern for me this year as well. High Point, they bomb threes. This is one of the high-scoring offenses in the country, but they play nobody in the Big South. They did not play a top 25 team. They have no quad 1 or quad 2 wins, which is why they're rated 90th in KenPom. We honestly don't see teams in the 90s win games according to KenPom. We don't see teams that are this low in power rankings. They might be good, but we don't see them have success in the tournament generally. Miami of Ohio is over there at 90 as well. They didn't play teams that are high enough caliber, and it's just hard to pick somebody. You can't look deeper there without that. High Point also no top wins. That's the big part here. No quad 1 or quad 2 wins. We don't know what to make of them, and for that reason, I'm staying away as well. Their tallest guy is 6'7". Wisconsin, they've got multiple 7-footers on the team, and I think their best center, Hunter, I forget his name, but I think he's averaging 13 and 10 over there. He's going to just feast on High Point. Last year, Purdue, with Kaufman Wren at 6'8", he was playing their center, and he just destroyed High Point because they didn't have the size to stop the paint. They might shoot a lot of threes, but we've seen Wisconsin play well against some of these, some of the best teams in the country, and they know that High Point's going to be bombing away. So I think they'll have a good game plan figured out, and the 5'12s have just been less and less trendy over the years. Okay, the next, everyone has talked about High Point. We got through that one, why I would not pick that one. Let's go over to Akron. So this is maybe the one that I would consider. I'm not sure yet if I would pick this consistently here, but there's a few reasons. First, Texas Tech, their best player, JT Toppin, one of the best forwards in the country, he got injured earlier this season. Now they've been without him for a long time, but without their best physical force inside, this is a chance for a team with playmakers on the outside, a team that can keep it close against a Texas Tech squad that has had some big wins, but has also struggled down the stretch. They beat Iowa State without JT Toppin. They lost to him in the tournament as well. They beat Arizona, and that I think was with Toppin, but Arizona had those two losses in the middle of the season. They've been up and down. Texas Tech has really been an up and down team, and without Toppin, they're even a little bit more volatile. But here's what I like about Akron. Tavari Johnson, this point guard, can play. They've got two great players. They've got one good forward, Amani Lyles, 8 rebounds a game. He is actually a force inside. He's got solid post moves. He's a decent passer, over 2 assists a game. But Tavari Johnson, this guy can light it up. This team won the MAC conference, which is what Miami of Ohio is in, but I like them better because they have more dynamic players. They're better on defense as well than Miami of Ohio. We can see they're just outscoring their opponents by a little bit more. One conference loss to Miami of Ohio. I think they've been getting better throughout the season. And so here's the thing. They're slightly still outside of that KenPom range that we like to see. 64, that's the closest we're going to get. But if you're going to pick a 5-12, you pick this one. The other ones scare me a bit, especially UNI going up against St. John's, the conference winner. I think we want to stay away from that, just because in Northern Iowa did not play anybody this season, and St. John's just won the Big East. St. John's is too physical. They've got a lot of players, experienced coaching. I would stay away from that one. So, yeah. And then the other one we didn't talk about at all was McNeese. Here's my deal on McNeese here. So when we look at McNeese, they're going up against a Vanderbilt team that just made it to the SEC championship. McNeese beat Clemson last year in the first round. And the thing about Clemson was McNeese went up big in the first half. Clemson stormed back in the second to make it closer. McNeese this year does not have the size, and they lost their head coach, Will Wade. They also didn't play the schedule they did last year. Last year, they beat an Oregon Division I team. There's a quad 1 win. And then they lost to an Alabama team extremely close early in the season, and they proceeded to get better throughout the course of the season. That was a team that I had more confidence in, and a lot of those best players transferred over to NC State with Will Wade. This year, McNeese doesn't have a quad. I think they've been a little shakier in quad play. They got blown out by Michigan, lost by double digits to Santa Clara. This is not a team that is as battle-tested as last year. And I think more people are going to pick it thinking that, McNeese, they made a run last year. But, guys, this is not the same team. They don't have the size. And Vanderbilt has been getting better and better and better. They had a lull in the middle of the season when one of their best players was out. I think Duke Miles, he was injured in the middle of the season. They lost a few games back-to-back. This is a Vanderbilt team that started the season 16-0. They had a lull in the middle of the season, but then they just made a run to the conference finals, lost to a really good Arkansas team in a close game. I don't see McNeese winning that one either. Okay, and then let's get to some of our more long shot upsets here. 13 seeds. If we're going to pick a 13 seed, I would stay out of every other one. Cal Baptist is getting talked about. I would stay out of any of them except for Hofstra. If you're looking at one to pick, you pick Hofstra. Now, I've followed Alabama plenty this season. Here's the thing about Alabama. Aiden Holloway, their second leading scorer, just got arrested. He's away from the team. some sort of disciplinary issue, caught with an exorbitant amount of marijuana, I think a pound. I don't know how in the world you could possibly need that. But he was caught with it, and so he's one of their leading guards. And alongside Philon, they've got a ferocious backcourt. This team can score the basketball. But Hofstra is actually pretty solid on defense. Here's the thing. Out of the 13 seeds, they have the best defensive efficiency. They won a solid conference. Cruz Davis can score the ball. He can run the offense. Alabama doesn't play great defense. They don't pressure the opposing team particularly strong. They don't put great pressure on the opposing point guards. You look down here, they've got a lot of losses. They've been shaky. The reason why I'm not picking this game, I said you could pick it, but I'm not going to pick this one, is because Nate Oates has been very good in March Madness. Now, this team might lose in the second round to Texas Tech, or who knows, Akron might win this game and they might lose to Akron. But Nate Oates has consistently been very solid, and I trust him enough to win this game. So if you're going to pick a 13, you pick Hofstra. But like I said, it's a bit risky. All right, moving down the line, I would stay away from all the 13s, all the 14s and 15s. Just not enough quality wins on these teams. You look out here, McNeese has one quad 2 win. We saw that Hofstra's got 2 quad 2 wins. That's it. Outside of USF, St. Louis, and VCU, none of these teams have really proven it against quality opponents. You might project these teams to make a run, but with NIL, I'm telling you, it's going to be more and more scarce. So I would stay away from that if I were you. All right, let's move on to some of our other our other solid teams here, our other 9s and 10s that might be able to make a run. So when we look at the 7 seeds, 7 seed that I'm picking in some of my brackets to win a couple of games is going to be this UCLA team. This UCLA team had a really tough conference schedule and having to travel all the way across the country, going in a really good Big Ten conference, but they won a few games in the conference tournament, made it to that conference semifinal. I really like them, and I think this UConn team is really struggling. So UCLA, this is a little bit trendy of a pick to upset UConn in that round of 32, but it's one that plenty of people are making, and that's a common upset pick. That's one to consider. As well, we're looking down here at the 8 and 9 and 10 seeds. We talked about the abilities of St. Louis here. You know, I would honestly, a lot of these 8 seeds, Ohio State, Clemson, I am not a big fan of these 8 seeds. I think in my brackets I picked Ohio State and I picked Iowa. I've kind of stayed away from the 8 seeds. Utah State's an interesting one out of the Mountain West. I'm never a big Mountain West fan. Outside of those teams that actually won big games, San Diego State from a few years ago that was ranked higher, I've been a huge fan of them. And Utah State, they were the best team by far in the Mountain West, had a group of good wins, but they're going to win this first game against Villanova. I think they're favored here. Villanova has been the epitome of good against bad teams and bad against good teams. This Villanova team has not been consistent at all. They've got a Wisconsin win, and that's really about it. Every ranked opponent they've lost to, and Wisconsin doesn't really count because they're not ranked. So they don't have a ranked win. I think they're 0-7 against ranked opponents, 0-5, something like that. Utah State is a faster paced play of opponent. They also just won the Mountain West tournament. They play really good defense as well. That's one that I'm going to pick. I can't pick them to upset Arizona, though. I just can't. It's not a good enough 8 seed, or not a good enough 9 seed to do that. Who else do we want to talk about? I think the other one I wanted to mention real quickly here is these low seed SEC teams. Now, last year we saw John Calipari's Arkansas team win a pair of games to move on and advance. This year, a lot of these SEC had 10 teams get in. A lot of these lower level SEC teams, I say lower level, they finished in the middle of the conference. The SEC finished the year with 3 ranked teams: Florida, Alabama, and Arkansas. The rest of the teams bounced in and out of the rankings in the 20s, fell out the next week. Tennessee maybe finishes ranked. I think they might have been 24th, but the rest of these teams, their wins are just against each other. Vanderbilt was also in that group of being at the edge of rankings, but outside of Vanderbilt and Tennessee, who are a little bit better, the last 5, Texas, Missouri, Georgia, and so forth, those teams have just not been very consistent. And we've had questions about the SEC level of defense. It's a lot of shot chucking over there. I don't know what to think, but I'm not really going to be picking those upsets. I'm going to stay away from those high seed teams. If you want a team to maybe make a run outside of the top 5 seeds, a 7 seed Kentucky could be one. Kentucky is coached by Mark Pope. They've got great talent, so that's slightly different, but that's where I would go as well. And finally, we'll end here. Texas A&M is another one of those. That's another SEC team there at the bottom that just squeaked in. St. Mary's here, the issue about Texas A&M and why I'm going to be picking this one is that St. Mary's has just not been good in the tournament. I think they've only won 1 game in the past 10 years. They don't score a lot of points, and they're going up in a nightmare matchup, going up against Texas A&M, who scores 87.5 points a game. Just not a good matchup at all for them. So I'm going to be picking that one. So that might be the exception to my rule. But generally, we covered some of the first round upsets. And now here's the thing with a lot of these teams. Outside of a few 7 seeds, we talked about UCLA and maybe Kentucky that could potentially win more than 1 game. I don't have a lot of faith in any of these 11-ish seeds winning more than a pair of games. Right here, we've got South Florida, Michigan State. I mean, do you really think that South Florida could beat a Tom Izzo Michigan State team in early March? That's really tough for me to imagine. So just with all that, I'm not going to be picking a lot of teams to make a run. And UCLA, I'm going to be picking their run to end here in the Sweet 16 as well. So there's some late upset predictors here. We walked through why teams are capable of runs, why they're not, looking at some KenPom numbers, some quad wins, and everything else. And yeah, hope you enjoyed. We'll be back to cover some upsets and more March Madness stuff soon.